Aloha kauai, mahalo nui loa, and thank you for joining us this week in yet another exciting and informative episode of Wala'au. I'm Dickie Chang. A lot of people know about the Kipu area and the greater Kipu area. You remember the old Kipu Falls. You guys all remember that old and long Norfolk pine trees lined up there at Kipu. While we're at Kaumuli'i Highway, we will glance and look at the profile of Queen Victoria. We'll also see the gap between the Rice Waterhouse. Now, we had an opportunity to follow around, the Lihue seniors. The Lihue seniors, of course, is led by their leader, the president, our very dear friend, Marilyn Matsumoto. Marilyn Matsumoto wanted to show the seniors what and how she grew up in that greater sugarcane plantation back when. We had an opportunity to follow the tour. What did we learn? Well, we had an opportunity, first of all, to check in with our lead guide, Kipu Adventure Tours, and the ranch itself with Mr. James Marks.
So I was explaining to the group that at one point in time, William Hyde Rice, he owned from the Huli'ia River down in the valley, all the way down to the beaches on the ocean side in Kipukai. There is a monument for Mr. Rice close to where our office is, and there's also a monument at the top of the mountain for Mr. John T. Waterhouse. So I was explaining to the folks that Mr. Rice at one point in time, because he owned all of that, it was really hard when he started cattle on this side of the property to ride his horse over and do cattle on both sides. So there's an in-law of the family, Mr. John T. Waterhouse, that showed interest in continuing the cattle operation, and he pretty much bought the ocean side for a pretty reasonable price and continued the cattle operation in there.
One of the things that you were telling the Lihue seniors is obviously it's very difficult to get there. Access almost nil or none unless you have a boat that you park offshore. But you just wanted to reiterate to everybody that in Hawaii there are no private beaches. Every beach is public.
Correct, yeah. All beaches are public, and what's really unusual about this property is if you don't have permission from the landowner and you're not on our tour, you can't see what they saw today from the ground. You know, you have to come in with a boat, and because that is a public beach, but because there's lots of Hawaiian artifacts, native marine life, the federal government actually protects Kipukai from any beach landing. So even the locals that go in there, because they have to dock their boat offshore and swim to the beach, technically it's still a really hard and secluded place to get to.
You know, as a local boy, James Marks, you're here at Kipu Ranch, very popular land tour, very, very, very popular land tour. You have several different tours. But, you know, I know during the spring break or during the summer, you get a lot of the repeat customers and the repeat visitors that come back. Does it blow your mind that if and when some of the older, like Kupuno or different long-time, lifelong Kauai residents never had a chance to ever see that, and when they saw that, that's the first time ever in their life that they saw that view?
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Like, my grandparents, you know, my grandfather only saw it on both sides of my family because he was a fisherman. And a lot of the folks that we took up there today, that's one of the comments they made. Most of them have never been up there. Some of them that have, their families lived on the property when the Rice family did sugarcane, and they were able to go up, walk to the top and when they were younger. So.
And James, you mentioned William Hyde Rice. The William Hyde Rice monument is actually right when you mentioned at your headquarters, the entrance between this big, huge roll of pines.
Yes.
And many people know the old access to Kipu Falls, so right up on the top.
Yeah.
This Mr. Waterhouse monument, I mean, as you mentioned, unless you got permission from the landowners on the ground, nobody's going to be able to see that.
Yeah, no one can go up there if you're not on our tour. You can go to the William Hyde Rice monument, but in order to get to Mr. Waterhouse monument, there's only one road that goes to the top of the Haupu mountain ridge and back down.
Now, as a youngster and as a young guide, are you aware that at one point there was a school, there was a mortuary out here, there was a general store? I mean, tell us what your knowledge is of what this was way back then in the 20s and the 30s.
I mean, what's amazing is, you know, less than 100 years ago, I was told Kipu had their own baseball team. So small hustle and bustle community. There's about 300 workers and their families living throughout Huli'ia. They had a schoolyard, they had a hospital, trading post area. A lot of those families, when the Rice family ended sugar, they only were able to provide jobs for maybe 4 or 5 cowboys. So a lot of those families ended up moving out of Huli'ia to look for jobs elsewhere so they could support their families.
And it's probably safe to say 100 years old, you know, maybe back in the 1820s or pre-1820s. I don't think a lot of people knew that there was a Waimea Canyon or a Fern Grotto or Hanalei, and over this mountain was Poipu Beach Park.
Yeah, not a lot of people know that. Only nowadays, with a lot of these adventure tours and educating the guests as well as the locals, some locals, like for myself, I never been to a lot of places on Kauai, and I'm still learning new places too.
And that's one of the beauty, the sad demise of sugar, which inevitably the writing was on the wall. But with the closing of a lot of the different sugarcane field, hence we have ATVs, or we have mountain tubings, or we have zip lines. I mean, it's offered Kauai an opportunity to be not just the island of discovery, but it's also offered the local people to see what we never knew was in our own backyard for generations, if you will.
Yeah, true. Like for myself, I wouldn't be standing here. My family came way back when for sugar and pineapple, Portuguese, Filipino, and Spanish. So my background, and it's a blessing for us as tour guides. A lot of our tour guides are all local boys. We learn the history and we try to preserve that and carrying it on for our future generations.
Well, it's very well said. I remember in the old days when tour guides were tour guides. I hate to say this, but many tour guides made up their own information. But nowadays, you got to figure with the advent of social media and everything else, you cannot go through through jive, if you will, because there's so many people that read up, and you cannot make things up. And why would you? You want to give the truth and the facts, because that's what will move down generation, not just with the locals, but of course our visitors that come here and live here.
Yeah, so that's what I always tell the guys, when we first start off. If you don't know the answer to a question, just be honest. You don't know the answer. And if whenever in doubt, Google it. Like you said, anyone can find out any information. So we really pride ourselves in what we say to our guests. And we never really want to make anything up. We want it to always be authentic.
Tell us the story about the cattle here.
So the cattle, primarily a lot of people don't realize we had cattle introduced to the islands back in 1793 by Captain George Vancouver. Typically there was Longhorn and Hereford. Because we had cattle before the mainland U.S. in a lot of places, Kipu Ranch is actually the first registered Hereford cattle ranch in the mainland U.S. So if you guys see the brown and white cattle, that's all white-faced Hereford. Later on, we brought different breeds over like Brahma, Angus, mixed them together. We call them Brangus. We have white ones that are Charolais. But it's a beef cattle operation. And most of these cows, they say happy cows from California, but they live in Hawaii. Because of our local demand for beef, a lot of the cattle that a lot of local farmers and ranches they sell or auction off, a lot of it gets shipped off to the West Coast live. We don't have large enough facilities, unfortunately, here on the island of Kauai. So if they're not shipped to the mainland U.S., sometimes there's feedlots, like there's one on Maui that will take our cows. But that whole process, I was told when I used to work cattle that it's more expensive to ship feed in to finish the cattle than it actually is to ship the cow out whole. So that's why they do that process.
Welcome back, Kauai. If you just joined us, we are touring Kipu Ranch. Now, I had an opportunity, and Bruce and I, back in the year 2000, to follow the Kipu reunion. Who was our tour guide, you asked? None other than our very dear friend, again, the president of the Lihue Senior Centers, Marilyn Matsumoto. Let's go back to the Vala'au time capsule, taking you back to the year 2000, and we'll tell you folks a little bit about the history of Kipu and the Kipu Ranch area.
I just wanted them to see what kind of life I had on the plantation camp, and I wanted them to appreciate the beauty of this is God's country. Look at this. Whenever we see all rubbish, opala like that, that it's because of the people. Like over here, hardly anybody comes, so it's beautiful. I feel very blessed with so precious friends and supporters, and they're with me today now. And I said, it's a day. What I really would like to say is that if it were not for Ted and Antone, this would, and of course you and Bruce, it would not have been possible. But I feel so blessed, and I just wondered too. Is this going to be the end of my life? Because all the puzzles, the pieces are getting into the puzzles, and I feel like, I don't know, I feel happy that this happened. The thing too, I was thinking when we passed my house our house where Robin Rice lives now, I thought to myself, it brought me back memories because before my mother died, I told Mom, We had a hard life, yes, but we had a good life. Something that we didn't. We were good in everything what we did. I mean, at baseball, basketball, you name it, marbles, we could do almost everything. It's because we didn't go out. It was about 6 miles from Kipu to Lihue, so we didn't go out so much. We did our own fun things here. We would go to the river to swim, or we would hike over to Kipu Kai to go ocean swimming. And so it made us better people, I think, to me, I'd like to also mention that, if it were not for Rick Havlin, like Rick Havlin said, well, you can't get the county bus. I'll pay for the Akita bus. You just call Josie, and I've already talked with her, and this is her number, and I'll get her to get the Akita bus to take you folks into the pastures, and also Peggy to drive that wagon and haul us, transport us. When you say haul, you think of animals, but we're not the animals. Transport us from the monument, I thought, to the site, But Rick Havlin, yes, remember Outfitters too. He is so supportive of our senior program, of Lihue Senior Center program.
We had an opportunity to speak to the lead guide here, James Marks, and I was commenting to him when we were overlooking the Rice Waterhouse border out into Kipu, that so many of the seniors came up to me and said, I was born and raised here all my life, and I never ever seen this site before. And I do have to tell you, I've been here for 30 years, and the only other time outside of today that I was blessed and privileged to be standing at that border was with you 17 years ago.
Oh my goodness! This is over here. Well, for one thing, that not anybody can come in to Kipu because it's a private place, and you need to pass the gate and then come up the pine trees. So I can see why they didn't see this. It's because and today we're privileged because Robin Rice gave us the okay to come. I had to see Robin too to get permission. There were a lot of things that I have a whole file full of what I had to do to get to come here today, But I'm keeping it for 2 years from now. If we're still alive, we want to do this again.
Marilyn Matsumoto, something extremely exciting happened in conjunction with this Kipu reunion.
Yes, we had a wonderful weekend. It was really unbelievable. We had people from Halfway Bridge, Huli'ia Valley, Akakui, Rice Camp, and Seki camps. We met at the base of Mount Haopu, and we had a wonderful time talking stories and all the things that we used to do when we were very young.
Marilyn Matsumoto, your maiden name, of course, is Hada?
Hada, H-A-D-A.
And
yes.
Your family was originally here from Kipu, and you, of course, were born and raised in Kipu.
Right. Born and raised. Our grandfather was one of the 3 Lunas they had on the plantation. So we had a beautiful home, and we did well.
Life's simple pleasures back then was really, what the good old days were all about.
Yes, we were fortunate that we lived not really like a plantation. Most people around our homes were plantation people, so their homes were a little different from ours. Because my grandfather was a Luna, we had better things in life, And some of our neighbors had a hard life. When I say hard, they used to have kerosene stoves where we had gas. And they used to have they had to cut their wood to make fires where we had gas heaters. We were very fortunate though.
Well, it's totally different from what our children and our grandchildren are going through or have gone through. For one thing, we did not have electricity until 1939 or 1940. And therefore, without electricity, we grew up without refrigerator, we grew up without electric light. Many of the amenities that comes with electricity. And therefore, what options we had was outdoor. Our recreation was more outdoors, and that means doing a lot of hiking, a lot of fishing in the streams, swimming in the river, swimming in the reservoir, all that kind of outdoor activity, hunting, fishing, and fruit picking in the wild. And as far as having toys, we had to make our own. We had no transportation out. Well, most of us did not have any transportation out, and therefore we either had to walk or use a bicycle. So in that manner, in a way, we were isolated, but at the same, and probably that is what brought this Kipu group in such a tight, group. So, one other thing is that because we grew up in such a situation, I think it made us very independent and creative in a way of seeking entertainment, doing things, home construction, home repairs, and all that kind of stuff.
When I was growing up, we were discussing it with my brothers when we saw all these mountains, and it brought us back a lot of memories, good memories, and our life is so different from the ones that are today. Our games, we climb the coconut tree, knock the coconut down and split it up, half. And also the mangoes, when they were ripe on the river, we would climb it and pick the ripest one and shake it down and then dive into the water. That was our part of life living. They were our toys, as I would call it. And to live, I'm in Ohio now, so it's different, although we live in a country. But you can't beat these places. And I'm here today to reminisce the things that I have been doing during my early years before I left here. And my family, we were very close, big family. And if we wanted to go swimming, we have to ask my mother because she was afraid that we would, get hurt or something like that. And if we didn't, we would sneak down, a bunch of us would sneak down and go swimming, and our hair was really long, and it's what part I remember. And when we came home, we had to stay in the river, on the rocks, to dry our hair until it's really dried. So when we get home, my mother would ask us if we ever went swimming, and we would lie to her and say, no, we didn't. And she would come over and touch our hair, and there's dampness on it when you wash your hair, especially when they're long, so naturally you get the dirty end of it. So we got the switch for lying. But I remember the hard work that we did, but it was nothing to us. It never really mean anything like, complaining or anything. We never did. We just did it and knew because we had to do that. But we plant taro, of which we make poi out of it, barefooted. We went in there in the water and work on the mud, pulling the weeds. We did all those things that they don't do it today. And I have more things like hunting, fishing with my dad, the fish pond that is on that river, Lihue River. Minihuni Fish Pond, that's the name of it. And we used to fish right alongside to catch mullets. And there's a lot of fish, all kinds of fish, crabs that we've caught and ate. And my family is very close. We're all close together, as you can see on these today, our nieces and nephews now. But there's only 3 of us living out of 17 children, and I'm the 16th. And then I have a brother, 2 brothers, and we're the only ones alive. And my mother lived until she was 99 years old. 3 more months, she'd have been 100.
I'm Matsumoto before, and I went to Lihue school at that time until the 6th grade, I believe, and then I moved to Oahu, Honolulu, and I worked as a maid, I guess, and went to McKinley High School. I graduated from McKinley, and then but everybody else goes to Honolulu after they graduate, but I came back to help my mother. And I married a Hawaiian boy from Hanapepe, and I raised my family here. And right now, well, all my children went away. They better themselves, and I'm the only one living on the homestead in Kalaheo. And so we came for this reunion, and it was nice to see everybody, although we all have aged and changed. And we're having a good time, though. Well, there was a Japanese cemetery at the foot of this mountain, and we the bond season, we used to come and go to the graves. But they finally, Mr. Rice, I guess, took all the graves out, so we don't come anymore, and there's no grave already. But life is good. I like this slow pace. But my children and grandchildren and everybody else, my sisters, they all moved to the big city where there's more jobs and opportunities, I think, yeah.
Marilyn, what nationalities of people lived here in Kipu?
Well, we had, it's funny you asked that, because in Rice Camp, most people were Japanese. And you get the other side, at Seki Camp, they had, and Akukui, they had a mixture. Filipinos, Hawaiians, and Portuguese, yeah. But most of the Japanese people lived in Rice Camp.
When we talk about Rice Camp and Kipu, define to the viewing audience, the residents and visitors alike, where are we exactly located on Kauai?
Well, we are about 3 miles in towards the mountain, right below Mount Haupu. And it's just the base of the Mount Haupu.
And people look at Mount Haupu in the profile of Queen Victoria. We get the view looking Mauka, but very rarely does somebody even get into this greater Kipu area.
Well, this is a private land, so people can't just come and go through. We need permission from Mrs. Patricia Rice before we do enter here.
Interestingly, when we look at this beautiful row of Norfolk pine trees that are planted along this area here, in my opinion, being everywhere in the state, this is the longest stretch of Norfolk pine trees. But very interestingly, your grandfather and some of his friends planted these beautiful trees.
That's correct. I understand these trees were planted in 1920s, early 1920s, and my grandfather and his friends planted. It's about a mile long, and I think they planted about 200 on each side. Because right now, if you were to count, we may have about 180 on each side.
Incredibly humongous Norfolk pine trees with that.
Right. Right now, it's really huge that you and I, if we were to hold our hands together, we can't put our hands right around the trees.
Now, the areas here, we talk about homes used to be here, schools used to be here, houses used to be here, stores used to be here. What was the days of plantation life like around here, and describe what was the surroundings like?
Well, when we had a store right here, only one store, and we had a school right close by the store. But every morning we would be walking from home about 1 mile through the Norfolk pine trees to go to school and walk home.
When we talk about a chicken skin episode, as far as Vala'au is concerned, to see those in their 60s, their 70s, their 80s, even upwards to their 90s, along with their children and their children's reminiscing here, many of whom hadn't seen each other for decades. You talk about tears in your eyes and a lump in the throat. It was a sight to behold, certainly.
Yes, it really was an experience. In fact, someone approached me and said, "Can't we have another reunion next year?" I said, "It takes a year of planning, and I think we need to wait another 5 years before we talk about one." It was really something that only positive things. It really was chicken skin.
Well, first of all, I think much of it remained the same as in the past, except when we were growing up, these were all sugarcane fields. Of course, old Pine Tree Road, Norfolk Pine Tree Road, still remains, and it is. Oh, and one thing I noticed though, where we had big reservoirs over here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, they all not much they're only ponds now. So that's kind of a disappointment, but it's understandable that it has turned from sugarcane fields to ranch.
The two families I'm familiar with is the Rice family, which is a Kipu sugar plantation, and it was started by William Hyde Rice. He was the son of missionary William Harrison Rice, and he was a manager of Lihue plantation at first. Then he took over the Kipu area on a lease from Princess Ruth, right. And after a while, the whole area from Kipu to Akukui area, the whole area, in fact, the whole large area was sold by Princess Ruth to William Hyde Rice and to George Wilcox. Now, William Hyde Rice got a small portion called Kipu and Kipukai, and the rest was by Grove Farm Plantation. They split the cost of it. I think the total cost was about $3,000 for William Hyde Rice, and he had about 1,000 acres of sugar land, and the rest was Wilcox, and he paid the rest of the cost of it.
What made you decide to not only write about this area, but more importantly, put together a reunion in which everybody here is just having an unbelievable small kid time chicken skin feeling about the upbringing of this, really pure and wholesome surrounding that we're at?
Well, it was a matter of the old folks getting old, and they've been complaining that they haven't seen their old friends since the 1930s. And they said it would be so nice if we could see them again, because they're scattered all over the world. They all left Kipu in the 1930s, early 1940s. So I said, let's try to get them together, primarily for the old folks. And that's why we organized in 1996 the first Kipu reunion. And we tried to contact everyone that we can think of. And after we finished that reunion, we said this is the first and only reunion. Then came 1999, we decided, after talking to some of the old folks again, they said they'd like to see Kipukai. That's the one place they'd like to see Kipukai. So I said, maybe we can hike up to the top of the hill of the mountain and see Kipukai from the top with the approval of Mrs. Patricia Rice. And she gave us approval to hike to the top there, and that's why you folks hiked there this morning to the top to overlook Kipukai.
Welcome back, Kauai. Let's head back on over to Kipu and let's check in with many of the people that once lived in the greater Kipu area as they reunited for the first time after 40, 50, 60, upwards to 70 years. Talking to those in the reunion, when we mentioned the profile of Queen Victoria, from a distance we can see that zigzag road, and not a lot of people have the opportunity to go there to get to the Rice Waterhouse boundary looking down toward Kipukai. But interestingly, so many of these plantation workers might not have even had that opportunity up until the past weekend to actually see the view from that panoramic coast, and it certainly brought a lot of tears to their eyes also.
Yes, it really did. They were so happy that they could see the ranch from the top of the mountain.
Many of them might have been maybe a little bit too fragile to do the hike, but
Right.
it was nice to see four-wheel drive transportations to show them a view that they never saw in their entire life, even though they were born and raised here.
Right. They were really happy to even see the plantation from the top of the mountain.
And talking with a lot of the old-timers, very interesting. Miley is found here, Mokihana is found here. I'm not sure if Kauai residents realize that, but also wild peacocks and a lot of wild pigs kind of roam freely around this area.
I understand that the Mokihana plants are right in Mount Hau'opu, and the peacocks and the pigs are they just roam around. If you had a net, you could just throw the net over and catch all the mountain pigs you want, you know. It's plentiful.
Welcome back, Kuwait. And I just want to say a special aloha out to our good friends there at Kipu Ranch. Want to say aloha to Dion, to Antone, to Mr. Ted Shacks, and their staff of guides. Now, if you just joined us, we're doing a special. In the calendar year 2000, we had an opportunity to see that greater Kipu area. First time that I actually had that opportunity also to see the borderline between the William Hyde Rice property and, of course, the Waterhouse property itself. We had an opportunity to check it out, kick back, relax. We were able to catch up with one of the tour guides, a very jolly fellow. His name to many is known as Rando Palau. But of course, come on. Everybody knows Rando Palau is affectionately known to all of Kauai as Brother Lambo.
Yeah, you guys are at Kipu Ranch, and we're a part of Kipu Ranch Adventures. It's a 4,200 acre working cattle ranch, owned and operated by the Rice family of the William Hyde Rice Corporation. Boundary lines from the top of the ridgeline back up towards the river and valley here. And it all just came down to from plantation to cattle ranch to what it is today. A working cattle ranch with doing tours on here, just going over the history, sharing what our island's about. And this was all once owned by a princess. Her name was Ruth Ke'eli Kolani. Great-granddaughter King Kamehameha the First. Often came to this island being from Big Island of Hawaii and stayed at a summer home near Kalapaki. When she did come, she always had an interpreter, spoke Hawaiian, fully Olelo, just wanted to be a role model for the youngsters who lived here. And wherever she went, she had William Hyde Rice as her interpreter. And wherever she went, there he was, kind of deal. As the relationship grew with them, a lot of it had to do with kids. She took to his kids, being like the surrogate grandmother, being that her kids died at a very young age. And they say that the kids say that her heart was as big as she was. Okay, supposedly she was 6'2", a little over 400 pounds. Big woman, very intimidating. So called to be a great teddy bear. Interesting fact that, she was from the Big Island, had her place in Oahu, but came to Kauai a lot. And where she supposedly came on her summer breaks and had her time out here, which is pretty cool that she had done that. As for me and my coworkers, I can honestly say why we love working here. We love working here because of the environment. What we do have to offer, sharing the island with people from around the world, which is I think the biggest point that we love about it, and just being a part of it. Ted shared with the ranch and how it became. And we work with great people, great environment. Hey, why not have fun doing it, riding on a Kawasaki mule or a Kawasaki T-Rex? And I love my bosses. I love the people, and I'm blessed. People don't realize what's in our backyard is so much. Just by looking at the mountain and its vegetation, I want to say at least half of this is edible. Mango, papaya, citruses, also stories with the ridgeline, Queen Victoria's profile. And sometimes I just kind of think back to how it was back then. And, what if I was around, what I've been doing? And, that's a great thing to think about, especially looking at when you're stuck in traffic and stuff.
Welcome back, Kauai. If you just joined us, we are exploring the greater Kipu area. Now, a lot of people don't really know the Kipu area, but take the time, please, to take the drive to Kipu Road, and of course, you want to drive toward the Norfolk Pine Trees. Now, that's all a private area, but it is run, and they do a great ATV, 4x4 ATV tour. Of course, that's our very, very dear friends, Ted Shanks, Dion, and Antone, and all the good folks there, all the brothers over there. They're at the Kipu Ranch Adventure Tours, so check them out. I believe they have 4 different types of tours, but if you have an opportunity, that's really the only way to go check out the tunnels and, of course, the Rice Waterhouse Gap. We had an opportunity, as I said, to follow out the Lihue Senior Centers. Thank you to Marilyn Matsumoto, our very dear friend and the president of the Lihue Neighborhood Centers, for what you did for the seniors. Remember, we're bouncing back a little bit about the present time and, of course, the past. And when we speak about the past, that's the year 2000. Enjoy, reminisce, aloha. This is what the sugar industry was all about, way back when. Talking to those in the reunion, when we mentioned the profile of Queen Victoria. From a distance, we can see that zigzag road, and not a lot of people have the opportunity to go there to get to the Rice Waterhouse boundary, looking down toward Kipu Kai. But interestingly, so many of these plantation workers might not have even had that opportunity up until the past weekend to actually see the view from that panoramic coast, and it certainly brought a lot of tears to their eyes also.
Yes, it really did. They were so happy that they could see the ranch from the top of the mountain.
Many of them might have been maybe a little bit too fragile to do the hike, but
Right.
it was nice to see four-wheel drive transportations to show them a view that they never saw in their entire life, even though they were born and raised here.
Right. They were really happy to even see the plantation from the top of the mountain.
And talking with a lot of the old-timers, very interesting. Miley is found here, Mokihana is found here. I'm not sure if Kauai residents realize that, but also wild peacocks and a lot of wild pigs kind of roam freely around this area.
I understand that the Mokihana plants are right in Mount Hau'opu, and the peacocks and the pigs are just roam around. If you had a net, you could just throw the net over and catch all the mountain pigs you want. It's plentiful.
In the valley and in the pasture land, when everybody gathered under the tents and had their bento luncheon and exchanged their stories, so nice to see the generations coming together and families, within one another, doing family portraits, people hugging and sharing their, not only their hiking adventures but their stories itself. They also had an opportunity for many of them for the first time to actually go through the tunnel, the mountain tunnel that links the Koloa Poipu side to the Kipuans right within this area.
Yes, that when we were youngsters, we used to take our bicycle and go to the tunnel, but we never had some of us didn't have the opportunity to go through the tunnel. But that day they were able to go through the tunnel, and they came back telling me, and there were even pictures of there were two ghosts in the tunnel, and this guy showed us the picture of the ghosts, how they look, and they were ghosts.
Well, the tunnel was built in 1949 when Grove Farm Plantation was merged with Koloa Plantation, and they had to get the sugar from Akukui Camp area in Grove Farm to the mill in Koloa. And there was only two ways to get the sugar across the mountain. One over the mountain, called the Skyway method, or one through the mountain. And they debated what they should be doing. Just at the time, there was an auction for drilling equipment for tunnel in Oahu by the Army. So Grove Farm immediately went there and bid for it for $20,000, and they got the complete drilling equipment to drill this tunnel. And this was done by Mr. William Moraney. Then he started digging the tunnel, and took him about 4 months to dig right through the tunnel at a cost of only about $200,000. As soon as it was completed, they could haul the sugar from Grove Farm, Hauku area to Koloa, and did not have to use the Lihue mill anymore, which was a problem with them. And that's the story of the tunnel. It was strictly to haul sugar from one end to the other end.
Interestingly, so many of these plantation workers gave their blood, sweat, and tears to the plantation itself. And it was very interesting for myself, because talking to a lot of the old-timers, they never knew or even went to Waimea Canyon, never knew about the Wailua River or went to the Wailua River, or needless to say, Hanalei, something that nowadays we take for granted. And it seems as though, like a trip to Niumalu or maybe Nawiliwili or Lihue was a big event of that time and era.
Right, because most of the people here didn't own a car, so they worked 7 days a week, I think, and 10 hours a day. So they really didn't have time to go holo, because they were working all the time. And so some of my friends, yes, Anini was something they've never seen before. It really was something new.
Were you pretty surprised that over 300 people, Kipuans, Halfway Bridge, Huleia, river areas, and the surrounding people that actually came to this reunion, because it really was something that made you feel good about the good old days?
Yes, I really did, Dickie, feel very good about doing this, and as I mentioned earlier, someone asked me if I'm going to do another one next year, and I said, oh, it takes a year. But there was someone from Halfway Bridge who told me, you know, Marilyn, thank you so much for including us in your reunion. And I said to her, you went to Hulia School, didn't you? And she said, yes. I said, well, we included all those who went to Hulia School, Halfway Bridge, Hulia Valley. And you know those, going back to the Halfway Bridge people, they walked 6 miles a day. Just from Halfway Bridge to the school is 6 miles. Every day, 12 miles going back. We only walked 1 mile. I mean, we were lucky, only 1 mile we walked.
Why do you, as a coordinator of this event and knowing the good people of this island of Kauai, you know, the plantation, we talked a lot about the plantation, you know, really making Kauai and Hawaii what it is today. How would you encourage various communities out there, you know, be it from the, you know, the west side, the North Shore, or different communities? How would you encourage them to get together and tell them how worth it everything is once people once again get reacquainted with one another, because these are tears of joys and tears of reminiscing going all the way back to the Hanabara days, if you will.
Yes, I would encourage all the communities to get to think about it, because to me it's really rewarding to have a reunion and to see all the people so happy to see old-time friends. Some hadn't seen 50 years, you know, and to do things that are special, things that, and to go areas that, to go places and to do things that are special, not just go to the restaurant, you know, do fun things.
You know, Marilyn Matsumoto, we want to commend you and certainly thank you for doing a great thing for this community of this greater Kipu area. You know, we all know you as being, you know, one of the big leaders for the Lihue seniors, and thank you for taking care of our seniors, of course, but we see you harmoniously jamming your ukulele. You play the harmonica very well in many of these public events, but I would just like to say on behalf of the many lives that you certainly touched, many of whom will never, ever, ever have the opportunity once again to come on this soil, but it was so important for them to be here because this is where they were all born and raised. And I think relationships as youngsters are something that you're going to remember, you know, entirely for the rest of your life.
That's correct. Dickie, I feel very grateful that I can do all these things. I still have the ingredients of good health where I can talk, walk, and drive. And I said that I will continue to do this service as long as I have those ingredients with me. But I want to thank Vala'au for your caring and your support. You were with us 3 days, and I thank you very much for helping the Kipu Hulaia Reunion Committee. Thank you. You and Bruce, thank you very much.
I think it's very important for the children, the grandchildren of the original Kipu residents to have their story told, because this is history and this is the first generation to come to the United States. And when we look back into the history of the families of Hawaii, the Issei's and Nisei's, the Japanese families, our history goes back only to about 1900, to the entrance of the immigrants, Japanese immigrants. Our history really does not go back into Japan. We've lost that contact. So it's a very short history, and it's fairly easy to maintain that short history. 2 or 3 generations, that's all it takes. And that's all we have. So we have to try to maintain our heritage, our history, family history, because it can be done. And for the future generations, it's nice for them to know where their parents came from, where they lived, under what condition they lived, and how difficult it was. I think it's very important that they know this.
Can't say I'll speak for everybody, but I think they're all happy to come back and see the changes and the, you know, friends, how they've changed. And I think everybody had a good time. You know, making acquaintances, renewing acquaintances again. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad that whoever coordinated this did a good job. And I hope they make the next one. I'll still be around.
These mountains here that you see in the back, I look at it now and I think to myself, and we were talking about it, my brothers and I, how did we ever climb up those mountains and think nothing of it? To get all those flowers that we have to bring down and to fix it, to make leis, and then turn around and sell it.
Oh, my first word is joy. I think I can see in everyone that I have run across the joy of seeing someone you haven't seen for a long time. And I've always maintained that you can remember those people best who you grew up with. You know, if you grew up with someone while you were maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, somehow as you get older, you will forget those the recent ones that you met, the name especially. But in our community here where we're so close together, I think remembering their names and their faces remain with us almost like permanently. And therefore, it is a joy to see all our ex neighbors and outlying neighbors again after all these years.
And I remember as a boy, before we said goodnight, on Tutu's porch, the family sat under the full moonlight, telling stories of the old days, legends of the ancient byways, listening to each other vow. We sang all night our favorite songs in perfect harmony, to end the night with songs of praise, just a closer walk with thee, telling stories of the old days, legends of the ancient byways, listening to each other vow. We were so close back then when Grandma was alive. We would hold each other's hands and sing throughout the night. We were the best of friends, the years have come and gone. I wish that we could go back then, sing just one last song. Memories of times gone by still linger on my mind. All the love our family shared these days, it's hard to find. Telling stories of the old days, legends of the ancient byways, listening to each other. Back then when Grandma was alive, we would hold each other's hands and sing throughout the night. We were the best of friends, the years have come and gone. I wish that we could go back then to sing just one last song. I remember as a boy, before we said goodnight, on Tutu's porch, the family sat under the full moonlight, telling stories of the old days, legends of the ancient byways, listening to each other vow, listening to each other vow. Listening to each other vow.
That's good.